Now, without further ado, let's just get into this. So, there's this small documentary that's been going around. It's kind of small. It's pretty obscure. It is kind of obscure, but it exposes an obscure sect of the United States society, I guess. But yeah, so it's a little small. It's, I'm sure none of you have heard of it. It's a small documentary called The Tiger King. So I watched it. Finally, it's not small at all. It's literally been taking the entire frickin' nation by storm. It seems like everyone I know has either seen it or considered watching it, or who have heard people talking about it. It's literally all over the internet. And you know what? For pretty good reason. I will say that it's the latest Netflix original documentary that just came out. Excuse me. Yeah, just because of the amount of publicity this thing was getting, I was like, man, this thing better blow my fucking mind. And it definitely did. I'm really not gonna badmouth this just because it's so popular. I'm not gonna be that guy. I probably am that guy, but I'm gonna try not to be that guy. I'm not gonna shit on this just because it's popular. Because it's a really well-made documentary. It's really well made. But if for some off reason that you have never heard of this documentary before, if you've literally been living under a rock, which is totally possible given the circumstances that we have today and in the world, it's kind of a look into this obscure personalities who own these exotic animals, or tigers, and have like tiger zoos. They're the main guy that we follow in this documentary. His name is Joe Exotic. That is his actual name. It was actually changed. His actual original name is actually kind of hard to pronounce, so him changing his name is actually not a bad idea. I will say it first off, this Joe Exotic guy is actually kind of likable a little bit until further on, until he kind of collapses in on himself and gets some and does some shadier shit. But at first you're like, you know what, dude, this guy's would be kind of fun to hang around a little bit. But anyway, he owns a shit ton of tigers, and he runs a tiger zoo, or an exotic pet zoo, his own zoo. I forget where exactly it is. Oh man, I'm blanking on where exactly he's located. I want to say, it doesn't fucking matter. But so the whole documentary kind of follows him, his exotic pet ownership, and how kind of shady the business kind of is of this whole exotic pet ownership ring. He's not the only one. There's another guy. His last name's Antle. He runs another tiger farm or tiger zoo, and he employs a harem of women. He has a cult of women working for him. It's kind of crazy. But it mainly follows this Joe Exotic and his feud with this other lady named Carol Baskin, who runs this organization called Big Cat Rescue, which is basically to prevent the breeding and posing for pictures of these tiger cubs, because you find out later in the documentary some shady stuff happens dealing with these cubs, and when they get older, what do the owners do with them, because honestly they just become a problem and not financially feasible to keep around and feed constantly. So she's kind of there to protest what Joe is doing, and so a feud kind of gets jump-started between this Joe Exotic and Carol Baskin. So that's kind of where we're at here, with the sort of general what you start out with this documentary. But I will say, as the documentary keeps going, it just gets crazier and crazier, as these Netflix documentaries tend to do. But yeah, just kind of getting into the quality of the documentarian. I want to say, who's the guy? Who is the documentarian? Oh, what's his name? I forget. Anyway, I'll get back to you on that. But yeah, when you're watching this, you're it's basically the best way I can describe this documentary is it's basically just a car crash. Like you don't want to look at it, but you kind of just, it's unavoidable. You just have to look at it pretty much. And that's kind of the appeal to this documentary. And the whole industry of selling and buying these exotic pets just gets more and more shadier, like, as you watch. And you're just like, oh, okay, there's really no good people in this documentary. Like, there's no black and white. There's no good guy. There's no bad guy in a sort of story like this. Like, I'll go back to that Trials of Gabriel Fernandez, that other Netflix documentary that I do recommend watching if you're, watch my review on that. I have a review on that on my channel. Go watch my opinion on that. But with that, there's like clear, the parents who abused this child are clearly bad people. They are awful. They are scum of the earth. With this one, it's not the case with this one. Each player in this documentary does some good things, but also does a lot of bad things and does some things that are highly hypocritical. Like Joe Exotic, he like seems to like actually really care about these tigers and care about these animals, at least at first. And when you're watching, and he also like employs like nobodies off the street just to try to help them out. I mean, granted, he doesn't pay them a lot, and the place that they gave him to stay is kind of a shithole. But like at least it's something. Like he's giving them something. He's still giving back somewhat. He is himself pretty much an entertainer, and he's giving us all this entertainment. He's running a zoo just to entertain other people. So he might have been in this exotic pet industry and running the zoo for good, noble reasons at first, but you kind of see how shit kind of hits the fan with that whole mentality, along with this feud that comes along later, and that leads into Carole Baskin, the head of this big cat rescue organization, who she kind of perceives herself as this sort of angelic type of personality where like she's the righteous one, she has all the moral high ground, and Joe Exotic's like down here, he's doing terrible things to these cats and these tigers and all these animals, and he's just the devil, when she's kind of doing the same thing. She's taking cats, and Big Cat Rescue set up their own zoo, and they're doing the same thing that Joe's doing. Probably not all the shady stuff about that you'll find out in the documentary, but she's kind of a hypocrite. Plus, there's some shady stuff with her, with her background and who her husband was and what happened to her husband, and that there's a lot of loose ends with that. So she's kind of a shady personality herself, but she is doing good with the whole promoting regulation for these tiger cubs and breeding them, mass breeding them for financial gain, and that's pretty much it. Once they grow up to be 6 months, they're pretty much not profitable anymore. And a lot of these exotic pet owners who use these breeding techniques as financial gain for them, they pretty much just euthanize the tigers once they become not financially feasible to keep around because of how much they eat, how much food they need, cost of living, and all that. They're just like, fuck it, let's just kill them. It's cheaper. And people have been doing that, and you'll find out later, exactly who's been doing it. But so she is doing good, but she's not exactly a saint like she wants to, perceive herself as. And there's a lot of other players in this that you'll find out later that you watch it. There's 7 episodes. Each episode's around, I think, 40 minutes long. So it ends up being around 5 hours. It's not a long watch. So if something like this definitely intrigues you, if you watch the trailer or hear me talking about it, and if it intrigues you, I would definitely check this one out. It is not bad. It is really good. It's a really well-made documentary. It's high quality. It's not biased at all. It shows pretty much every single angle that you can on people like this. Like it's not biased. It gives everyone their own due and shows the good and the bad of who they are and what they're doing and what they have done. So that is something that you have to appreciate with documentaries. I said this with my review of Trials of Gabriel Fernandez, where the documentarian takes this unbiased look, and with every piece of information that was presented to the documentarian or the people behind the documentary, they kind of come at it with skepticism, and they question all the facts, and they take it all in, and they present it in a non-biased way. That's something that maybe like Making a Murder kind of didn't do. I mean, I understand that Making a Murder is a really good, well done documentary, but you can't really refute the fact that it is kind of biased. So yeah, that's not here. I think the documentarians do a fantastic job with, capturing this world and letting us in on this really crazy world of exotic pet ownership, and it's insane. So, yeah, check it out. I mean, if the whole, it's not the greatest documentary I've ever seen, and that's kind of what I've been it's been hyped up as. I mean, this thing is immensely popular. It's like it's the top documentary in the world right now. I mean, everybody and their mother is watching it right now. I'm looking at IMDb. It's up the popularity, that popularity meter, right underneath when you scroll down a bit in IMDb, when you search up the title, it's at number 1. So, and the popularity is rising. So this thing is taken the world by storm, it seems like, and it's weird to think about. I don't understand why it has. It's kind of dumb. I'm kind of dumbfounded on why it is like that. Why it's piqued the interest for everyone. I mean, I know the word of mouth is this shit is really fucking crazy and has a really eccentric personality behind it. And I mean, his name is Joe Exotic. He's a gay Southerner guy who owns tigers and has a bunch of guns, and he's always strapped up with a fucking gun on his belt. And he runs an exotic pet zoo, and he has bleached blonde hair, and he has a mullet. It's crazy. The dude is insane. I mean, he's not clinically insane probably, but he's an interesting person. You cannot say he's not interesting. So there's that aspect to it, but I mean, it's just so weird how something like this gets talked about so much. It's I mean, I will say it's probably, I kind of have a theory on why it's so popular. It's mainly because a lot of people, like I said before, it's like a car crash, or it's someone else's life falling apart. And I feel like a lot of people kind of, for some reason, the human race loves seeing, I mean, I don't know if they love seeing people's lives fall apart, but they're intrigued by it, and they always have to watch it, and it's always entertaining to watch. I don't know why it is. I'm like that. I mean, I watched this, and I had fun watching it. I found it highly entertaining. It was an entertaining documentary because it was crazy, And life is like that, and a lot of people's lives end up being like that. And all we do as a general public is just kind of watch it happen, and we can't take our eyes off of it. The main character, Joe Exotic, has this really powerful line at the beginning and the very end of the documentary, and he says, why animals, I don't know if it was animals, or tigers die in a cage. It's not that, their soul dies. It's because their soul dies when they're held in captivity. So it's just well, then why were you doing it in the first place, Joe? What? And what the hell? I mean, the show, the documentary holds up, encompasses the whole hypocrisy with everyone involved with this situation. That's Joe, that's Carol, that's everyone involved, really. And it also just kind of highlights everyone else's hypocrisy as well. The reason why this is probably so popular is because people just love or they enjoy seeing someone fall, maybe. And that's just kind of, that's brought forward with the whole dynamic between Carol and Joe and their feud with one another. And it's just it accentuates the fact that they were unwilling to look at themselves. Like Carol's unwilling to look at herself being such a hypocrite with this whole big cat rescue when she like takes this whole crazy cat lady to a whole nother level. And Joe's unwilling to look at himself and being like, maybe I'm taking this whole Carol Baskin feud a little too far. Maybe I should focus on my actual zoo and the tigers that I have, instead of abandoning that and just trying to take down this one chick who's trying to take me down. So I believe that's kind of why the documentary is so popular. It's because people are just unwilling to look at themselves, but they would rather see someone else go down. They'd rather see someone else fall than watching themselves gradually fall because of it. So I think that's why. I think it's definitely a big message to be taken when watching this, and it's just once in a while you just kind of have to look at yourself in the mirror and kind of say to yourself, is this what I really should be doing? Is this really me? Like, what am I getting out of my actions? Am I treating people right? Am I doing the right things? Like, really self-analyze yourself. And I do that a lot, and I think it definitely helps, especially with, interactions with others and how you're perceived. So I think that's just kind of the main message that you need to take out of like a documentary like this. And it is very good, and I'd highly recommend it. But I mean, let's all just calm down with the whole holy shit, the Tiger King type of stuff. Like, let's just relax a little bit. It is a great documentary, and Joe Exotic is a very interesting man, and this is a very interesting story, but let's all just calm down a little bit.